Arizona baseball goes into the postseason with high expectations and crumbles to the ground.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, check out FanDuel, by the way. FanDuel, check it out. All right, now, we've got a lot to get to this show. We are going to talk some Arizona basketball a little bit later on in the show, but a big thing that we need to start with first is Arizona baseball. All right, I was at the game on Friday, and, well, it was a disaster. Anybody that watched these two games knows that these games appeared over before it started. Now, against GCU, yes, Arizona was up 3-2 in the fifth inning, but Candiotti, who is Arizona's ace, was struggling, was laboring to get through every single inning, and it always felt like there were two guys on base. He was getting out of jams, and then in the fifth inning, he obviously succumbed to that, and he gave up a monster inning that Arizona was never able to really recover from. And it then obviously against Dallas Baptist as well, that game was pretty much over before it started. Arizona had no Arizona had no chance. And I think it kind of masks two things, good and bad, for Arizona. I think, when we look at it in hindsight, the Pac-12 probably wasn't very good this year. I don't think that there was any chance, I don't think in hindsight the Pac-12 was, honestly, it just wasn't good. No other way to put it, wasn't good. And I think also more than that is that Arizona probably got a little bit lucky here. I know we hate saying this, but it seemed like every single game they were winning in the last at bat. Some, things where they weren't just beating teams because they look better. I think some of it felt kind of fluky, maybe kind of like that Oregon State series where Oregon State was a team that basically blasted Arizona for 2 games and 2.5 games, and Arizona got rallied in that last, and they won the conference. Now, at the end of the day, you still got to win games. So you still win games. You still have that capacity to be able to make that one happen. But I think that you need to be able to also factor in as well that that Arizona also just didn't have a lot of talent. I mean, I know that the pitching staff was one of the better in the country. Totally get that. And I know that they were top 5 in ERA, and Kevin Vance is to be commended for that in a great deal. But you watch Candiotti and you watch Walty, and they didn't, at least in the postseason, they weren't overwhelming by any means. You didn't watch either one of those guys and say, well, you know what, that game's over because they're on the mound. Both of them really, really struggled, obviously. But overall, the numbers are the numbers, and you got to say that it was one of the best pitching units in the entire conference. So that really can't be disputed. One of the better pitching units in the country. But the bigger problem, though, is the bats. Arizona just did not have enough bats. You have, Summerhill is good. Mason White was good. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of guys that you were really worried about. And I think that was a big part of this with Arizona, is that they just didn't really look the part. And you never got the sense that if Arizona got down 3 or 4 runs, that they would have a great opportunity to be able to get back in the game. As a matter of fact, you didn't have any faith that they would be able to get back in the game. Now, you could say that Arizona is, the Chip Hale and Arizona outperformed expectations, and you would be right. They were picked to finish 9th. They won the conference, and there's a lot to be said for that, for sure. And again, I am a Chip Hale guy still. We will get to that here in a few minutes, but I am a Chip Hale guy. But I will say that, the talent year 3, it just doesn't look great. And I think that's something that he's going to have to correct. Now, the people that want him fired, I think, are silly. You don't fire the Pac-12 Coach of the Year who won the regular season and postseason tournament without having a possibility of making that one happen. But you're clearly got to get some better players in there, especially better hitters, because this was kind of painful to watch, honestly. I mean, anybody that watched it, I mean, you know what you saw, and it wasn't pretty. But you know, you also have to say something though that Chip Hale, and again, I know it's kind of a even keel stat, I get that, but Chip Hale was also a dude who has got Arizona into the postseason in his first 3 years. That's never been done before. I get that can be a little bit disingenuous for a variety of reasons, but it still is what it is. So we got to be honest there. But this was very disappointing. There's no other way around it. I mean, you campaign really hard to be able to host. You got a nice home field advantage at Corbett, the juice box, which I love that term, by the way, and you just weren't able to deliver. That's kind of what this one comes down to. And I think Arizona fans, especially with the kind of support that they brought in, I think Arizona fans were expecting a lot more, and that just didn't happen. It was just kind of a lifeless performance. And, I think a lot of people were making the point that he, this was a team that was just didn't look prepared. And I don't know if they weren't prepared, but they certainly looked kind of lifeless. They didn't really look like they were super motivated to be there. And I think that's a little bit of a problem. And I think that's something that Arizona is going to have to address going forward, because listen, at the end of the day, Arizona you could say that, it's not an SEC school, but it's still one of the 10 most prestigious baseball programs of all time. You should be able to have some expectations of being able to get into a regional beyond just getting into a regional and getting blown out. You should be, especially if you're hosting, you should be able to get into a super regional, and we'll find out. Again, I think Chip Hale's going to get 2 more years. I think Chip Hale should get 2 more years. This is a situation where, they obviously showed much improvement. And I think you guys also got to make the case, too, that this was the first year where he had all of his dudes in place. So that's obviously a big deal as well. But there was still an issue at play that the team just looked woefully unprepared. And that's something that I don't think can really happen, especially when you're going to be hosting at High Corbett Field. Now, with when it comes to the future of Chip Hale, so you're going into the Big 12. This isn't a monster baseball conference. Now, Oklahoma State is very, very good. There's no doubt about it. Oklahoma State is very good. But Arizona should be able to compete with all these other schools. ASU hasn't been good. Obviously, Willie Bloomquist has not done a great job as the ASU skipper. Utah, Colorado didn't even have baseball, so there's that. But I think it's just dispiriting for so many fans to just see how Arizona was kind of taken out to the woodshed by GCU and by Dallas Baptist. And I think also with GCU is that GCU kind of owned Arizona this year. That can't really happen. Again, if you're going to lose to some, really big name like SEC team or whatever, okay, I get it. You don't love it, but you get it. But, just getting smacked around by GCU, that is that's an issue. And I think that's something that Arizona has to be able to rectify. And you're losing pitching this offseason, so you're going to have to hit the portal. You're going to have to get some good pitchers in here, and it's going to be up to Chip Hale to be resourceful because, listen, like I said, this is this roster almost entirely his at this point. So, going forward, whatever success he's going to have, it's kind of like with Tommy Lloyd this year, is going to be based on the merit of his own roster, not anything that he inherited, nothing like that. That's going to be the way that it is going to be. So we will find that one out. But overall, like I said, just a very dispiriting performance. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But first, LinkedIn, my friends, LinkedIn. Check it out. Where is LinkedIn on here? All right, now with LinkedIn, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. You might say to yourself, Mike, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, that is where it is at. I know people that got jobs from LinkedIn. You probably know people that got jobs from LinkedIn. But a big part of all of this is you also need to know that you can hire people and you can get hired with jobs from LinkedIn. Check it out, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. This is where it's at. This is the spot where, everybody kind of goes to get their own stuff, and there's a reason for it because it works. From hiring to getting hired, this is the spot. Check it out, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, before we get into a little bit of Arizona basketball roster talk, we are going to talk a little bit more Arizona baseball. And with Chip Hale, again, there's a lot of people out there that don't like Chip Hale, that want Chip Hale fired. I think that is premature, and I think a lot of it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a U of A baseball expert. I'm obviously not. You've listened to the show. You know that we spend next to no time on this, so this is absolutely kind of an outside-the-box talk about, Arizona baseball. But I do look at it, and it's like this. It's not like this team has just been an absolute embarrassment in its first 3 years, and they clearly showed improvement this year from a win-loss perspective. Now, is that sustainable? Is he the man for the job? We don't know, but I think it's also very hard to hire or to fire somebody after that, after 3 years. And keep in mind too, with all that we've been through with Jay Johnson and Jed Fish, I think it also matters that you got somebody that wants to be here. That is a massive part of all of this for me, is that you got somebody that wants to be here. And again, that's not the end all be all, but he wants Arizona baseball to be good. He's lived Arizona baseball. He's not a mercenary. He's not going to go off to the next school that gives him a great offer immediately. So again, that maybe it shouldn't mean anything to me, but it does mean something to me. And I think that that's something that I think kind of gets lost in this day and era of baseball. So, we'll find out. Now, if it doesn't work, I get a lot of people saying, Mike, that'll be on your guy, Dave Hickey. Correct. It will be. That will 100% be on Dave. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Dave. Everybody knows that, but this would be on Dave Hickey. Now, one thing that I'm not going to sit here and take, though, is people saying Caitlin Lowe is on Dave Hickey. Caitlin Lowe has not really been good so far. We can be honest with that. But Caitlin Lowe also was going any AD in the country. I repeat this. Any AD in the country was going to hire Caitlin Lowe because she was Mike Candrea's handpicked successor. There is not a coach out there or an AD out there that was going to tell the greatest softball coach of all time that his handpicked successor was not going to be the next coach. So anybody out there that is telling you that, I say phooey. I say you are wrong. Check it. But Chip Hale, that was clearly Dave's dude. So, Dave's going to be judged on Chip Hale and what happens from there. Now, as far as realistic expectations going forward, I get some people like my guy Kobe Thiel who will say that, Arizona baseball should have higher expectations than Arizona basketball. I don't agree with that. Yes, I know there's the 4 national titles. You won one in 2012. You got a runner-up. I get all that. But you've also got a lot of years of mediocrity in there. I think you've got the equivalent of 4 top 10 finishes with Arizona baseball over the last, 20 plus years, 25 years, something like that. With Arizona basketball, you got 10 of those. So, or if you're going 25 years, you got more than that. But you get the point. You've got a lot more. Arizona basketball has just been far more consistently successful. Now, you could say that in the tournament, it hadn't been good. I totally get that. Especially with Tommy Lloyd, who I'm a big fan of, but Tommy Lloyd hasn't gotten it done in the NCAA tournament so far. I don't think that there's any way to dispute. But with Arizona basketball, you don't really have any limitations as far as how far you can take Arizona basketball. With Arizona basketball, that roster is, or that you can get pretty much whoever you want. There are no limitations. You can compete for national titles. You can compete against any school in the country to be able to get the players that you want. You just got to be able to go out and do it. And that's something that I think with Arizona, you've got to keep a very, you've got to remember Arizona baseball's got some more limitations here. Again, it doesn't have the money that some other places do, especially for NIL, and it's a little bit harder, but Jay Johnson also showed that if you have a dynamic personality in here, that you should be able to win games. And I think that's something that can't really go unseen. So again, Arizona to me is a top 10 to 15 baseball program, probably closer to 15 than it is 10, but it's still a place that you should win at. And you should have expectations every 2-3 years to probably get into a super regional, to be competing for a College World Series spot. And if that's the case, then you're obviously in a good spot. But I think that is kind of where I'm at when it comes to Arizona at this point. Softball is a different animal entirely because they haven't been able to get a pitcher in the last 15 years, which is wild to me because you're right next door to California. But for whatever the case may be, Arizona has not been able to get a pitcher. And that's been something that has held them back a great deal. Now, Mike Candrea, even when Mike Candrea 13, 14 years ago, still wasn't able to get a pitcher, and that's been a problem for him. So until Arizona really gets that one settled, they're going to continue to have some issues, and it could be ugly at times. So we'll find that one out. Now, we were just talking about Arizona basketball, and that this is a program that doesn't have a lot of, how do I put this? Drawbacks. You should be able to win a national championship at Arizona. You should be able to consistently compete for national championships, especially too, you're going into the best conference in the entire country in the Big 12. You're going to be competing against schools that have a big stake in what they're able to do. That's something you got to keep in mind if you are the University of Arizona. And I think with this roster, I think is ready to rock and roll. I really do. Now, again, we're going to talk about a recruit that they could possibly add here, but this roster is good. This roster is, when you look at Jaden Bradley, we talked about this yesterday. When you look at Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, and Caleb Love at the point, some pretty good stuff. And not only is that some pretty good stuff, that is a unit that is built for the Big 12. Up front, too, you got some dudes that can score. That is something that I needed. I need guys that can score. I need guys that can put the ball in the hoop. And this unit certainly has a lot of that going for it. And, again, a big part of this, too, is being tougher. On the perimeter, Kylan Boswell wasn't tough. I mean, just kind of is what it is. Kylan Boswell just wasn't very good last year. Kylan Boswell was essentially Kirk Kriisa, different player, but kind of the same type of impact. Wasn't just not an impactful guy. And you obviously wondered where his brain was half of the time that he was here. You see the pictures now where he's all cut up and everything. And that's obviously not a good look for Arizona or for Kylan Boswell, but especially for Arizona because they allowed him to look like that. But now you got Jaden Bradley in, who's far more of a dog, who's far more of a physicality. I am going to get up in your face. I am going to try to prevent you at any point possible from getting the ball up the court, to be able to finish in traffic, to be able to do a lot of different things. Jaden Bradley is that dude. And Jaden Bradley wants it. There's no question about where Jaden Bradley's priorities lie. And that's a big thing, too, is that we've had point guards. This is going to be the first year where we haven't really had kind of a weenie point guard. Like Kirk Kriisa was more interested in talking to the other team than actually being tough. That was all a fake. That was all a facade. Kylan Boswell, that story has obviously written itself out. Jaden Bradley, you know exactly what you're going to get. KJ Lewis as well. And I think with Caleb Love, I think you got a lot of that as well with Caleb Love, that this is a dude that I think is going to come back on a mission. We've known for a while that he was going to come back. And I think that he is going to be ready to rock and roll, and Arizona needs him. There's no doubt about it. Arizona needs a fully focused Caleb Love to be able to get to where they want. And if they get that, then I think you're going to be competing for a national title. Again, at Arizona, with Arizona basketball, you shouldn't have the drawbacks that maybe you do for other schools. That's something that I think you got to very much keep in mind. So we'll definitely talk about that. But first, FanDuel, my friends, FanDuel. Now, you might say to yourself, Mike Luke, where could I bet on some of these games? Because I think you are a fool and I want to bet against you. Well, you're right. But if you want to bet for me or bet against me, use FanDuel.com/locked-on. Check it out, my friends. All kinds of good stuff at FanDuel.com/locked-on. You can bet in-game. You can bet futures. You can bet before the game. And the great thing about FanDuel is your money is good. Check it out, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Another one of these ones. I get tired of saying it, but it's true. You're going to thank me later on it. Going to thank me later. A lot of pats on the back for some good advice. Check it out, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk a little bit Arizona basketball recruiting. You got that 8-man rotation we talked about. And, if somebody like Henry Vasar or Conrad Martinez is able to kind of force his way into the rotation because he's too good not to, awesome. That is what we want. We want more of that, not less of that. But there's also a chance, though, that won't happen. And Arizona is very much looking at adding another player. Will Riley is that dude. Will Riley, I think, if Arizona can get Will Riley, he can be the dude who, kind of comes in with Carter Bryant and is a, probably a 2-and-done player. Reclassified, obviously 6'7", 6'8" wing, can shoot the ball, and has an NBA future. These are the kind of guys you want if you're a University of Arizona Wildcat fan, especially losing Joson Sanon. So be it. You lose Joson Sanon, you also know that you got to you bring in some other players that are very good in the process, and that would be one of those guys with Will Riley. With Arizona, don't feel bad for Arizona because Arizona is going to continue to get 5-star players. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Will Riley, though, would be a very nice fit for the U of A, and he's going to be visiting Kentucky here. And if Arizona can get him out of that visit without committing, then I think Arizona's got a pretty good chance here. He's got a few visits after that, but he's the kind of dude that Arizona would love to be able to add to the 2024 class. You can add him to the 2024 class, then I think that like I said, it's kind of rock and roll. It's kind of rock and roll at that point, and then you're really, really good. Like I said, though, I think Arizona is in a good spot. I still think Arizona is going to add another player. Whether they're going to be a difference maker or not, I don't exactly know, but Arizona is going to be in that spot. Now, with the Big 12 going forward, we are going to talk about that a ton tomorrow. What are expectations for Arizona basketball and Arizona football going into the Big 12? Also, what are expectations for Arizona baseball and softball to a lesser degree? I mean, we've just been talking about that this whole time. What should Arizona fans expect? That's going to be something else that we got to keep in mind as well. But it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a fun week. Also, might have a U of A football commit to talk about, wink, wink. But that will be something that we can obviously continue to talk about as well. But again, big talk, Big 12, we are at that transition period now. We're not that far away from Big 12 Media Day, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, you're going into a conference where a lot of people actually care about sports. It's going to be weird. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be, like I was telling Muehlbach, it's going to be interesting going into environments where people actually care. We are not used to that. We very much want that, and I'm excited about that possibility. So we will continue to talk about that. But like I said, wanted to talk some Arizona baseball today. I'm still Team Chip, #Team Chip, but got to be able to break through next year in the postseason. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think you built on it. Overall, this was a good season, but not the way that it finished. And, in Arizona, you have high expectations. That's what you sign up for. And I get it. Softball, I think, is a little bit of a different animal. And then we're going to talk tomorrow about what Arizona basketball and Arizona baseball should be. But as always, very, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.